call. So it's going to be really
All
interesting.
right,
I'm on the
thanks.
camera and everyone else is in person.
Yeah,
This
thank
is
you
going to be
so
great.
much. I'm kind of off to the side here. I'm going to be sitting off. I might be a little bit off camera, but I shared that we kind of prepared some questions for you. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to go through introducing every single student. They're going to introduce themselves individually when they ask questions, or I'm going to let you know their name. Um, and if you have a question for a particular student, just ask me or describe them, and we'll figure it out. Um,
Sure.
so our first question is coming from Ella.
Hi, Iola. How did you get started?
How did I get started? So I started at Uken about 4.5 years ago as a introductory kind of like junior product manager. This was actually my first full-time job out of school. Prior to this, I was working at a mobile messaging application called Kick um, as a product analyst, and then before that, I was in school. Um, really getting into the games industry was a fairly just kind of fortuitous situation. I kind of got lucky to kind of get in. Obviously, like many people, very passionate and enjoying games. Very big tabletop person, as Ryan may have mentioned in the past, as I was playing board games with him when we first met. And from that, started building my own board game as a kind of a hobby and a passion project. And that kind of launched me into this particular career path in games and product management within games.
Thanks, we
Yeah,
appreciate it.
go
And
for it.
as we go through from question to question, um, uh, I have a habit sometimes of cutting people off before they were quite finished. So you can let me know when you're ready for another question if you want to throughout our meeting. It
Yep.
seems to be recording just fine. Our next question is from Leonardo.
Hi, I'm Leonardo. I want to ask you, what is the greatest challenge for a game developer?
Greatest challenge for a game developer. So this is an interesting question because I'm personally not a game dev. I have a little bit of experience of like development and programming in the past with my from school, but I'm not personally the person creating games. However, being in my role as a product manager, I find one of the hardest challenges is really deciding what to build. Games is a very interesting medium in where you can have full freedom as to what type of experience you want to create, whether it's the aesthetics, the world, the music, the sounds, the actual gameplay, the mechanics, your motivations. There's so many things that you can do within games. And as a result, you can really find yourself spending years on a single product that you're trying to make the best it can be. And that is a very daunting task. And deciding how you want to allocate your time is going to be one of the most important decisions that you choose to make to lead to the best product you can. So whether you decide you want to build a side quest or a new character or a new kind of objective mini games, add in a new mechanic, add in some more deeper lore or worlds, those are all choices that you will have to make, and that's something that I find one of the most challenging decisions when coming to game development. That said, it's a very doable challenge because there's a lot of inspiration and there's a lot of information out there as to what works and what doesn't. You see so many different games in the market that have been very, very successful and that have been able to bring joy and excitement to millions of people. And that's something that you could look towards for inspiration as to what to focus your time on to make sure that you're developing the best experience you can.
Now, is the you do you have a particular game that you work most closely with at Uken Games? I thought I either remember hearing you talk about Ava's Manor. Is that did I get the right one?
Yeah. Ava's Manor, A Solitaire Story. That's the game that I currently manage. It's a mobile game. It's a free-to-play freemium experience. So think of like your Candy Crushes, your Toon Blasts, Gardenscapes, those kind of style of game. This is a product that I've been managing for a little over 4 years. I think we're approaching our 4-year anniversary. so a little under 4 years, I should say.
So have you
And yeah,
been there since the inception?
yeah, I've been at Uken for about 4.5 years at this point. So I was on a title prior to Ava's called Puzzle Solitaire, just a Toon Blast style saga map based gameplay where you're playing Tri-Peak Solitaire. And then that product evolved into what we have as Ava's Manor, our kind of flagship product within Uken. That is a solitaire Tri-Peak style gameplay paired with a more robust narrative meta.
Wow, that's a long time to be with a single game. I think it's cool that you've been there since the inception, and then that you've been along for the ride that entire 4 years. Do you guys do something special to celebrate the anniversary? You said the anniversary is coming up. Anything special?
Yeah, there's always a great moment to share that experience with the team. So running like kind of parties and team events internally, but also running events and kind of giveaways with our community and with our player base, so that we can kind of commemorate the milestone. Managing a live product is a very interesting experience because you're obviously laying the tracks that you're running forward on as the product is running. So as you're trying to cater to the tens or hundred thousands of players who are playing each day, you want to make sure that the experience that you're building next is going to be something that they really love and can continue enjoying for years to come.
All right. Our next question comes from Wyatt.
Hi, I'm Wyatt Robinson. As an aspiring game developer, do you advise us to go more indie to build up some experiences, or go straight to like bigger companies?
I think it really depends on where your interest lies and kind of where what you want to try to achieve. When it comes to games, I think each experience is very unique and very challenging in their own right. When you go to a large studio, so you think of like your Activisions, your EAs, your Ubisofts, they have massive, massive teams with hundreds of people who are building games, and they all have to work very closely together, and they all serve a very specific role. You may find that this is the specific person who does 3D sculpting, or maybe this is the person who does the sound design, or maybe this is the person who design or who does the game economy aspect of the game design. And everybody has a very specific role. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to become an expert within a specific discipline, then going to a large studio affords you a lot of focus and also a tremendous opportunity to learn and understand the ins and outs of game development, because there's just so much resources as well as so much data available when you're talking about millions of players who are playing your game every day. As you kind of go from a large studio to a smaller and smaller one, what you find is you get the opportunity to be a lot more broad in terms of your skills and the work that you kind of take on, where you get the chance of dabbling in more art and more game design and more community engagement or whatever other interests you may have. And if you want to have a broader breadth of experience, going smaller affords you that. You can go as small as full indie and you build the game yourself. As some of you may already know, like there's a lot of things that go into it, whether it's the front end, the back end, the data infrastructure, or the game design mechanics, the art style, the sound design. Like there's a lot of things that go into making a really polished game. And as you build out your team and get into a bigger size, you have the ability to share that workload with other people. Personally, at Uken, we are a studio of about 70 people. My team in particular on Ava's is approximately 35, and that's split across like 7 different disciplines for game design, product management, data analytics, QA, art, and then development. I suppose I also forgot narrative design. So we have 7 departments across our team, and each of our departments kind of have our own responsibilities and what we're delivering. I really like this kind of mid-size, 30-ish people, 70 people size studio, because you get a lot of opportunity to learn and interact with all these different disciplines and to really feel like you can get engaged while still having the clarity as to what you're contributing to the organization and to the product.
All right. Ty is up next.
Hi, I'm Ty, and I was just wondering, what's your favorite type of game to develop?
Favorite type of game? Great question. I am personally a very big tabletop gamer. Board games. Love board games in general. I find them a very engaging and interesting medium as it ties in a lot of the same mechanics and design spaces of mobile games and video games, but you also get the affordance of in-person social interactions where you can have things like table talk and you can have things like tactical components. And I find that when you're trying to design a game, there's just so much kind of nuance that goes into it, whether it's the mechanics, the theming, the onboarding, the time that it takes to play, the complexity of the rule set, and that one of my biggest joys with board games in general is how well it can kind of be communicated to different groups. Maybe on this particular night, you're thinking that you really want to have a really rich, deep experience where you want to sit down for a 3-4 hour game with a rich storyline. But maybe sometimes you just want to flick some discs and knock some shit over. Sorry, apologies. But that's kind of the different kind of breadth of game design. And that's something that gets me really excited about board games in general, is because you have such a range. Also, other factor of board games that I love pitching for is the self-contained nature of it. A lot of games nowadays, they're very rich and they always want to build the 200-hour, 300-hour game, the open-ended worlds of your Baldur's Gate or your World of Warcraft or other Final Fantasy style games where you can sink hundreds or thousands of hours. But not everybody's looking for 1,000 hours of gameplay. Sometimes you just kind of want that crappy Hallmark movie or their rom-com, and that's kind of good enough. So really being thoughtful as to what the experience you're trying to create for your audience is what's going to allow you to develop the most engaging experiences. And I find board games has a really great medium to do that.
Yeah, we just, as a class, read an article recently about Stardew Valley, and some psychological studies on the calming effects that it can have. And so it's funny, we've been having some of that same conversation about games that sometimes you play because you need that calming effect. And it makes me think of what you were talking about with the board games and also with video games too. That sometimes you sit down and you're ready for a really long storyline and you're ready to sit down for several hours versus sometimes just wanting something that's a lot more simple.
No, absolutely. There's a model that was at OGDC talk that I would highly recommend. It's called Quantix. It's from a company, I believe it's Quantic Foundry. They do a play 12 gamers motivations, and they basically break down the different reasons for why a person would choose to play games and what type of goals they're trying to achieve. Whether it is kind of self-expression or creativity versus puzzle solving and mastery versus completionist versus discovery. There's all these different motivations that every game can be fundamentally broken down into. And when you think about the games that you're playing, you can look to these motivation frameworks to then know, yeah, that's what I'm kind of feeling. I want to feel creative right now. I want to feel powerful right now. I want to feel smart right now. We're all kind of very unique in terms of where our goals are, and games are an amazing forum for us to express and engage with those pieces of needs.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you. Just thinking about positions within your organization, are there any positions that stand out to you as sometimes having a limited number of qualified candidates when you post that position? It's a really high need area versus maybe a position within the company that is a lot more competitive because you have an overabundance of applicants for another position? What might those be?
That's a great question. It's a typical question because I'm not overly engaged with other hiring processes. I can speak that the more niche of a role you go towards, the more difficult it is to find that particular position and to fulfill it. So whether or not you're really looking for that expert 3D sculptor and 3D modeling, like that's obviously going to have a smaller candidate pool. From my own experience, product management is actually a fairly young discipline within game development, and it's not something that we typically see within game development. Product management as a discipline is more traditional to B2B businesses, and it's been a role that we've struggled in the past trying to fulfill, as it takes a mix of all your typical product management skill sets around understanding business, team, and user experience, and trying to optimize those three facets while also knowing how to leverage data as a B2C product, and being able to do consumer research and A/B test analysis or competitor research. And then kind of pairing that all together, it has lent itself to be a more difficult role to find that kind of particular individual. That being said, I do find that depending on your studio size and the notoriety of that kind of studio, you may just still find a lot of applicants. From our experience at Uken, when I hire for product management roles, we end up getting like 300 to 400 applicants, of which we do kind of move maybe 3 to 5 of them forward in the interview process. So when you are applying to large studios, there is going to be a lot of competition. But if you really focus on what is their role and what their needs are within that role, either through speaking with recruiters or trying to talk with the organization or people who are already in that organization, they can help inform you to showcase the skills that are most relevant to their role, because large companies or even mid-sized companies do have a specific need that they're trying to fulfill.
Yeah, you sort of kind of touched into the next question that I have a little bit with your answer on that one, so I appreciate it. But I'll pose it anyway, and that's can or should students try to be strong in a lot of areas and be well-rounded, or really become an expert in a particular area like scripting, animation, design, audio, some of those areas that you already mentioned?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer. Honestly, I feel like the best recommendation I can give is follow where you love your work. If you really enjoy and love a particular aspect and you really want to become a master in it, do it. Like if you love what you do and if you're passionate about it and you're excited about it, that you can wake up every day and you can be like, yeah, I really want to do some sculpting right now. I really want to do scripting. I find these puzzles or these problems I'm trying to solve something that gets me excited and something I find a lot of joy from. Fantastic. Like let that be your passion and continue following that, because if you love your work, not only will you just be happier day to day and that you can do your work well, but it also shows in the final product and what you're delivering. If you aren't really excited to be an artist in this particular format, then the art that you're creating is not going to be particularly exciting and perhaps bleed into the output that you create. So if you love what you do it and do it the best to your ability, and there will be a space for you to be successful. Some paths are obviously a little bit harder than others. If you go too niche, if you really want to be like designing weapons and you really want to be like sculpting weapons, and cool, then you have a smaller niche as to the studios you may be working for, but they do exist, and there's a need everywhere. And even if you may not be able to go like set your hearts out on like joining Call of Duty and working for Activision or something for sculpting that, maybe you can do a freelance and you can kind of start your own work there. When it comes to actually applying and getting a job though, yeah, focusing on the role, focusing on where your value add is to the company and how you can fill the needs that they have is really key. Having at least some amount of understanding for other disciplines is also very important, so that you can have empathy and ability to collaborate with other departments, so you can understand where their challenges come in, whether or not they're running into some technical challenges or other type of kind of problems that they're trying to solve. Being able to converse with them is really valuable to be successful and valued in the company.
As you were sharing that very insightful answer, I was thinking about willingness to relocate. I think sometimes when you get into a really specific niche, that you have to start expanding that willingness to relocate. I'm curious if you're from the Toronto area or if you relocated there for the position, and what's your personal experience with that?
It's a very interesting time, as the world of opening up from COVID, Uken Games, we started as an in-office organization, as many did, and still are. And I was in the Toronto region when I first started here. I was in the company for about 6 months before COVID hit, and since then we've obviously went remote during COVID and actually stayed remote. So I work from home 100% of the time, and um, we're now just a fully remote organization. I think a lot of companies are actually moving towards remote, especially within games. We are a very tech forward organization that doesn't actually require a lot of in-person connection in the same sense as other companies. So I think there is opportunity for continuing and building your career in a remote environment.
Thanks. Malik's got a question for you.
I wonder how can someone grow a business from making games?
Growing a business is really challenging. I think at the very start, build a game that's great and awesome and fun. We are in the entertainment industry, and we're trying to build fun. So as long as you have a really fun game that people love playing, then you can build the business afterwards, and you can figure out the monetization. There's a lot of different ways to monetize different types of products, whether it's through ad monetizations, in-app purchases, premium models where you're buying the product up front, or subscription-based models, or games as a service that you can have. So there's a lot of different ways to monetize, but first and foremost, build a fantastic game. And then afterwards, when you're thinking about monetizing, follow where the money is. So do testing, talk with your community, understand what is it that they want, and see if you can build some kind of mutually beneficial experiences where, whether it's trying to help them along and accelerate time with their in-app purchases, or maybe getting some exclusive content or customizations that doesn't necessarily corrode other people's experiences. The other thing I would mention is when building games for a business, understand the market and where the money potential is. So if you're thinking that I'm going to build a Steam game about breeding horses, think about how many really great games are in that industry and how much money you can actually sell. Is that 100 copies, 1,000 copies, 10,000 copies, a million copies? Setting that expectation up front is really important, because that can help you understand what you're getting into, so that you're not necessarily disappointed, or you're kind of in the right path. And then in terms of execution, it really comes down to building the best games you can. Kind of thing.
Yeah, as you were talking, my mind started drifting towards data and evidence, and I'm going to come back to questions from Carlos and Alex, and actually ask Makai to ask this question.
I'm a god, and how is how important is data in game design, and where's the data?
Yeah, we are in a world now where data is everywhere. You think of companies like Google and Facebook, where they literally have built billion-dollar companies out of data, and through like ad optimizations and the use of data. And as the industry continues developing, data is going to be of utmost importance. And knowing how to read and understand data is what's going to really help each of you kind of succeed within this space. I truly do believe. Gathering data comes from all different forms. As you play games, you're generating thoughts. Those thoughts are data. As you show the game to others and you watch other people play, that is data. Talking with people, play testing, watching experiences. There's all these different types of data that exist. You can look at other companies and other products and what they've developed, seeing how they continue growing. You can look at something like Uken and like Ava's Manor, and how we've been around for 4 years. That's a testament that we're doing something right, because we've been able to operate for so long. So you can look to everywhere and use that as a data point to help inspire and kind of learn how to build better products. In terms of actually your data collections, we build an internal kind of data pipeline for our product, where every single action that a player takes triggers a data point that we then store within our database that we can do comprehensive analysis around. So if you start a level, we know when you started, we know how much your economy is, and we know what you did within that level and what happened afterwards. Then we can see what you did after you played that level. Did you engage with one of our events? Did you make an IAP purchase? Did you play another level? Did you quit? And through the millions of data points you collect, you can start refining your product. If you're seeing that people aren't happy after this experience, then do you really need that experience anymore? Is there a way to improve it? If you see that players are always doing this one thing and they're clicking the right button and not the left button, why is that? Is there something wrong with the UX? Do you even need the left button? Using data is really what's going to help you be more informed and hopefully take the art side of game designs and help it bridge the gap towards a little bit more of a science. That being said, data is not everything. You can't design a product based off of data alone. Otherwise, you end up designing something that is soulless and kind of not very fun. So there is very much an art attached to game design, and finding that balance is really important. But blending data with the art is what's really going to set the best products apart.
Yeah, I'm thinking that sometimes you may have staff that fall in love with particular features in a game, but maybe discussion about data shows that it may not be something you really should keep in the game. So I think that can be hard sometimes to let things go. I would love to know, are there any examples that you can think of over the last 4 years, especially with Davis Meta, where you pulled some data and made a decision based off of evidence of gameplay that really paid off?
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody's playing Avas or has poked around in the game, this past month we actually launched a new feature. It's called a merge event, and it's a merge gameplay, very traditional within your casual space. It's a feature that we've been ideating for a little over a year, but it's one that we only recently started seeing our competitors really invest heavily into and bring into their product lines. And through that analysis, while also pairing it with some surveys with our player base, we invested into Merge Event and launched it this past month in early, or rather March 30th, so only a couple weeks ago, and it has been an incredible success in terms of how it has improved our product metrics and the overall enjoyment of our player base, where they're spending 20-30% more time every day playing, and consequently also spending a little bit more money to continue their engagement and their fun. Now, of course, there's many examples where using that type of analysis doesn't work. So blending the data side is really important with the art. So we've designed features where we look at other games and be like, hey, they're building this side mode and they've introduced these new levels. Why don't we build a side mode and introduce new levels? And we do that, and then we find that it doesn't actually make sense within our product line, because we don't want people to be playing the side mode, because the core loop is where you get the narrative and where you're going to engage deeper into our main product line. So we want to make sure that people stay focused within that core loop. So we ended up building this side mode based off of data that we collected and didn't actually have that right match with our product line. So there is very much a blend between using data to find successes, but also being able to comprehend and apply that data correctly such that it still makes sense within the game that you're creating.
Those are fantastic examples. I love how you not only talked about my question, and that was that you use data successfully, but there are times when you make a decision based off of data and realize that it wasn't the right decision. So it's not the end all be all.
Absolutely.
So Alex has our next question for you.
Hello, I'm Alex, and if game design isn't about just about making traditional games for PC, consoles, mobile, and tabletop, what other opportunities are there?
It's a really exciting space of games. You can see companies like Starbucks and McDonald's that they're bringing in games. Like you have the Monopoly days in McDonald's, and more companies are looking for ways of what they're coining gamification, which is applying game mechanics to other situations. And I think we are in a kind of an early age of the world where we're finding more and more ways to play and to find more ways to find enjoyment and satisfaction. And games is a great way to do that, and it can be applied to all types of mediums, whether it is in school and trying to create games within school. So perhaps you have a challenge to perform very well in this course, or perhaps there's a company out there called Prodigy where they literally just make math games, or your Duolingos where you're trying to learn languages. You can take any particular problem and throw on game mechanics onto it, and suddenly it becomes more interesting. There was a book that I was reading. It was called Reality is Broken. But I want to say, I can't remember her exact name, but her last name is McGonigal, I believe. I think. But Reality is Broken is the name of the book. It's a great book. I would highly recommend it. But they basically talk about how people have grown up to really spend all their time playing games, and they actually spend a lot less time not playing games. So if you think about your waking hours, you go to school, you go to work, and then afterwards you go play games. And you can easily spend 10 hours and just
You guys
play
relate.
all night, never sleep, to just
I see a lot of
play
head
video games.
nods. I see a lot of head nods.
I've been there as well. Like you're in school and all you can focus on is I just want to get back to my game. Like I want to go level up. I want to complete these quests, and like that experience transcends video games. Like you can apply that to other stuff. Like the things that you get you joy from game design, those motivations to play, those challenges, the discovery, the self-expression, the influence of power, those mechanics can still be applied into other forums like real life. In the book, one thing they talked about was an app that they created. It was called Chore Wars. And basically, they tried to gamify doing chores. So, doing your laundry, doing your dishes, throwing out the trash, vacuuming. Every one of those tasks is a chore. They're boring. They're not fun. What if they could be? What if you added a challenge to them? Oh, throw out the trash, but don't be seen. Suddenly it's a little bit more intriguing. Now I got to be stealthy. I can't be caught. What if the throwing out the trash also gave you a reward? Like let's say I gave you XP or maybe a point system that you can redeem for prizes. Suddenly it's more interesting. And now the idea behind Chore Wars is that now people may voluntarily want to do these activities because, oh, I want to get these XP. I want to be able to take on this challenge. I can find this kind of expression. And I think that type of mechanics can be applied to so many different forums, whether it's onboarding, education, skill development, or other kind of products like your McDonald's apps and playing games and collecting points to drive behavior. But yeah, I think gamification is a very budding space that applies a lot of the same mechanics and understandings of game designs to new industries and new opportunities.
I love it. I love it. Carlos has our next question.
Hi, I'm Carlos. Is it important to try all types of games?
It's one that I thought it wasn't that big a deal when I first started. That like you really want to love your game, and love like specifically what you're doing. But over time, in my experience, I find that games come in all shapes and sizes, and they all serve different motivations and different goals. And in trying out as many different games as you can, what you'll learn is hopefully an appreciation for all the different types of experiences. Just because you don't like a shoot 'em up doesn't mean that shoot 'em ups are bad games. Just because you don't like narrative style games doesn't mean that narrative styles are a bad game. By playing all these different types of games in all these different types of formats and really trying to just understand why is it and who is it that will play here will only benefit you when you're designing your own games and designing your own experiences. Inclusivity and diversity and inclusivity is a very big push right now within society. And I think by having more exposure into other games, you will also develop a better ability to be compassionate and empathetic to other player bases, and hopefully design an even better experience that everybody will love, and be able to take in inspiration from all these different experiences to blend into your own game mechanic. Yeah, I think it's one of the more underrated aspects of game design, and something I would highly encourage is try everything.
Yeah. So Ryan has a question for us, and then I'm going to round it out here at the end. So Ryan, if you'll share your question.
Hi Ryan, how do you know what games and features to build?
He's a little bit
Sorry, I cut
so
out there.
you could hear him. Can you say it louder for him, Ryan?
How do you know what games and features to build?
I'm sorry. I'm still
Yeah. How do you know what
a
game
little bit.
features to build?
Game features to build. Yeah, that's a tough problem. That was one of the greatest challenges I find within game development in general. I think that first and foremost, looking at what games have been successful and looking at where people are spending the time and finding the most fun. If you see a new product that comes out from King or the new EA game or new Activision game, there's a reason for why they believe that that game is going to be great. And then watching and learning about their community in terms of their responses to those design decisions that they made, it's going to really help provide guidance as to the do's and don'ts of future development. If you see the latest like Rainbow Six Vegas game and not do very well because it wasn't particularly inclusive or it developed new mechanics that just people just didn't care about, like that's a great signal to know what features to build and what not. If you see a mechanic that everyone's using, usually that's a signal that it's a good mechanic and that people really enjoy it. So whether it's a lot of these kind of like coin master games where it's just kind of tapping and getting rewards, or I guess, or whether it's your kind of puzzly games like your match 3 or blast and that's kind of spawning everywhere, or even the merge mechanics that's spawning everywhere. You can look to the industry and where people are choosing to spend their time as great inspiration for gameplay. The other area is in the previous question, playing a lot of other games, figuring out where that enjoyment comes from, trying out a lot of experiences. There was a really good kind of talk from Ben Brode, who used to work at Hearthstone, who's created or helped found Marvel Snap, and how he talked about when he started Marvel Snap, he started with inspiration going to Gen Con, a board gaming convention, and actually experiencing the different board games to use as mechanics for his Marvel Snap game. And a lot of the kind of mechanisms there is to kind of provide inspiration. So it really comes everywhere. Think about your player motivations, what the type of experience that you're trying to create. If you're building a horror themed game, do you want to layer in having a romance? Do you want to layer in having some comedy? Is that the style of game that you're trying to create? So being very mindful about the experience you're trying to create is really important. And then finally, I would say is, yeah, collect the data. Ask your player base, ask other people, talk about the idea. Games is a very exciting medium because we get the opportunity to create brand new experiences that haven't been seen before, and you have the full freedom to do whatever you want. If you want to throw in jump scares after jump scares, go for it. If you want to throw in crazy off the wall running and jumping, go for it. Not every idea is going to be amazing and not every idea is going to cater to everybody, but if you find some people who really love it, and if you really love it, then bring it to life. As long as you make great games that people enjoy, the money will follow and the success will follow. But always start with the best games you can.
That's some great advice, and kind of leads me into my final question, and that's, can you give us some parting words of wisdom for an aspiring game developer?
Yeah, parting words of wisdom. Yeah, like it would probably be around that. It's a really exciting time in game development. I know there's obviously a lot of kind of nervousness and anxiousness as you see major companies laying off large rounds of people, but I think there is also a very exciting time where we have a lot of new technologies, whether it's the use of AI and all the different ways of AI, which I'm still learning myself, but there's this amazing opportunity to be able to build really awesome products with great tools that are available. And now more than ever, we have a lot of access to a lot of data. a lot of communications, a lot of connections, and a lot of experiences that you can hopefully make some really cool products and a lot of really cool games. Always follow your passion. And if you love your job, if you love your work, and if you love what you're doing, you're not going to be hopefully too angry, too sad, and hopefully you can stay engaged and continue being excited and happy for what you're doing. And ultimately, I think when it comes to life and work, like, yeah, as long as you're happy doing it, then it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And the work will kind of show for it.
Well, it's been very evident since I first met you that you love your job. You're very passionate about what you do, and don't we all want that, right? Well, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. I've been recording this entire session, and I'm gonna share it with my other three sections, and I'm gonna follow up with you, and want to stay in touch. I would love to get updates about how things are going at Uken and with Ava's Manor, and we really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you. Enjoy the
Great
rest of
questions,
the
everybody.
day. And again, I appreciate it. I will be in touch. And I also want to ask you, when I reach out and follow up, I'm going to ask you more about Gen Con. It's kind of like a board game conference or convention. Okay. We have to talk more about that. All right. Thank
All
you
right,
so
sounds
much,
good.
Will. I'll see you later.
All right, have a great weekend, everybody. See y'all.
Thanks.
You too.